These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. Mr. Cody Sheehy, welcome back to Wallowa County.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me on.
Where do you typically live?
Well, most of the year, it's kind of split. We're a little bit nomadic, but during the wintertime, my wife and I have a 3-year-old son. We live on a sailboat. It's down in Mexico, and that's in a little town called San Carlos, which is on the mainland side of Mexico.
Okay.
And we'll go down there around November or so, and then kick off from there, and then typically just go out and sail over to the Baja, and then just cruise around there for 5-6 months, something like that, and then come. And so we won't be in marinas or anything, just anchored out, and then we'll come back, put the boat away. Usually we're out of Mexico before it starts getting real hot, so we'll leave sometime in May. And then these days we're freeloading off a family a little bit, so come up here to Eastern Oregon and hang out with my parents, or we'll go to Finland, which is where my wife's from, and spend the summer there.
Nice. The San Carlos I know about is on the Pacific side of Baja at Magdalena Bay, but are you over in
this is a different one?
Sonora?
Yeah, it's Sonora. So
okay.
If you were to drive directly south of Tucson, about 6 hours, it's next to this little the town there is called Guaymas, and then this is like a new part of that. So
gotcha.
It's just kind of a beach town, touristy a little bit, but it's mostly like Mexican tourists that come there, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, and it's changed a lot. We've been doing that for about, I'm going to say probably 11 years now, I think.
Yeah.
And so during that time, it started out with just, a couple marinas and the town was there. And now it's just huge mansions are getting built all around us. And yeah, it's crazy.
Gotcha. So, part of you has to wonder, if you see somebody with a lot of money building a vacation home in Sonora, Mexico, you got to wonder, are those ill-gotten gains?
Where's that money coming from?
Yeah, are these friendly folks?
Yeah, well, I love Mexico, and
yeah.
Mexico is a really friendly place to be. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
And everybody that we've met there has been really friendly. But there's rumors about some of that money.
Sure.
For sure. And there's been a small amount of violence related to that one time.
Okay.
But typically San Carlos, my understanding as a gringo, so I'm not getting the full picture, but it's kind of like a no violence zone. So a lot of cartel families will vacation there.
Right.
And so they don't want to bring that to where they live.
Totally.
And so it's fairly safe. But I think the majority of the money is actually from Obregon and Hermosillo. So it could be like all those huge, Ford plants that are going in down there. So like all that stuff, it's generating a huge amount of wealth. Mexico is growing really fast right now. And so, yeah, it's hard to know where it all comes from.
Yeah.
That's a big part.
So is that Cia Cortez, Bay, California? I get a little bit confused about that.
Yeah, exactly. So between the Baja and the mainland, it's the Cia Cortez, or Gulf of California.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's just a really, Jacques Cousteau called it the aquarium of the world.
Sure.
It was one of the most just abundant places you could ever have. Just whales and all the whales, dolphins, all that kind of stuff. The sea life was just incredible.
It is phenomenal down there.
Yeah. And it's a pale shadow of what it used to be honest.
Really?
It's been absolutely decimated. Yeah.
By what?
Just a series of overfishing episodes throughout the last 100 years have different commercial fleets would come in and develop, target a species, wipe it out totally. About 3 to 5 years takes to wipe it out. Sometimes in the case of the sardines, they'd come in and then it'd crash, but then it'd come back, but then it'd crash, and then they'd build up again, 20 years later, hit it again hard, and it would crash. So it's just been a lot of boom and bust down there. And then the other industries have grown. And so there's a commercial pressure, which has been historically pretty high. Then you also have the the Panga fleet. So it's just the artisanal fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's started out just kind of local stuff. But those fleets at some point in time, like, in the late 80s, they were up to like 20,000 boats, so these small boats. And now the numbers are down, way down on those. But it just kind of reflects the amount of fish. So right now there's not a lot of fish, and so numbers are down. Then some fish will come back, and there's real success stories too. Like the Cabo Puma area is always kind of like held up as a good success story of what you can do if you protect an area, and there's a really great reef there. And so the local fishermen got together and decided to only fish outside of the reef area and not fish within it. And then the amount of fish that's just coming out of that protected area has just been awesome. And so people point to that as like, okay, yeah, the reef fish can recover for sure. And that's looking good. We just got to do it.
Right.
The pelagics, it's so hard because they're moving around, and they're, how do you regulate? The ocean is hard to regulate. It's kind of the tragedy of the commons.
It is a tragedy of the commons. I should do an entire show on that.
Yeah.
That is a term that is not brought up often enough. And it's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating story, and the absolute perfect way to describe it. Okay, so tell me about this boat.
It's the boat that I live on?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Do you want me to start at the beginning?
Yeah.
All right.
It's the best place to start.
Well, the first boat I had, I got it in college. So I was going to Portland State University and didn't have any money, didn't even have 2 pennies to rub together. And I started dating this rock climber girl. And like all rock climb, they're dirt bags. They're looking for cheap places to live and that kind of thing.
Yeah, they'll steal chalk from a child just so that they can scamper up another boulder.
Yeah, she had all kinds of schemes going on. But one of them was, let's get a little sailboat, live on that. Heard that's cheap. And so I took out a school loan and bought this like $6,000 Catalina, 27-foot Catalina sailboat.
Okay.
And we moved on to that, and I think we broke up couple months after that. That's a pretty small place to live.
It's a relationship tester.
Yeah, we tested it.
Yeah.
And it came out negative.
Uh-huh.
But so now I'm stuck with this boat, and the boat was just full of awesome books. The guy who owned it before me, had just filled it with all the great rigging books and heavy weather sailing, and all the world charts were on there. So I started just kind of absorbing that. And I've always loved boats, but growing up here in the mountains, I'd never really been around them. So one day I decided to take it out sailing. So went out there by myself, was in the channel, put up all the sails, wasn't very windy. Things were really nice sunny day. And then turned the corner and just got blasted by the wind that was on the Columbia River, and the boat just got knocked down immediately.
Oh, really?
And luckily those boats are designed well. So it spun around and then came back up into the wind like it's supposed to do. So now all the sails are flapping, and I'm holding on for dear life, and it gets caught on the other side, knocked down that way. And eventually I figured out how to get the sails down and get back into the channel where it's protected. And then I go back to the marina, and now I'm trying to dock a boat for the first time, and there's probably 2 knots of current going through there. And so I'm going into the marina, and you got to like stay ahead of the current, because it's trying to pull you onto the boats. And took a minute to kind of get in there, and everyone was coming out of their boats to see what was going on. And I didn't hit any boats, luckily.
Yeah.
But I remember after that, this old guy came over, and he's like, "Hey, next time you go out sailing, come grab me. I'll teach you how to dock that boat." And he was next to me, so he didn't want me to hit his boat.
Yeah. That's good looking out.
Yeah, he was looking ahead. And so he took me out and taught me how to sail, and just fell in love with it. Just loved it. And then one summer decided to do like a trip all the way. I didn't really know where I was going. My goal was like somewhere warm, basically. So I started sailing towards California. And I remember the day I got down to Astoria, because you have to go all the way down the Columbia River. And there's the Astoria Bar there, which is a known, the graveyard of the Pacific. The waves can be gnarly.
Some of the most dangerous water in the world. Yeah.
Yep. And so I got down there, and a guy had said he was going to help me go out on the ocean for the first time. And he bailed on me. And so I'm sitting there at the dock trying to figure out, do I have the guts to go out across that on my own or not? And right about then, this guy that I had met, barely knew, but he knew me from the marina, and he had heard what had happened. And so he just showed up, threw his duffel on board, and he's like, "Let's go." And he'd been sailing to Hawaii and a bunch of stuff. And so he took me out and we sailed all the way down to,
So did he just rip a dinghy out to your boat or something?
well, I was at a little marina there in Astoria.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So he figured out where I was, and
Yeah.
the rumors had traveled back to Portland that,
Okay.
Cody got down there and that guy bailed on him and he's stuck and he doesn't know what to do. And this guy, Jerry, was like, I can solve that problem, So, and for me, my whole life has just been like a series of great mentors,
Uh-huh.
and just learning to recognize when there's someone willing to mentor you or even ask if you need to. But so he just mentored me and taught me how to sail in the ocean and on this little boat, And we get down to Crescent City, California, and he fell on a winch and broke a rib.
Okay.
And so at that point, he's like, "You've got it. I'm in pain. I'm going to get out of here.
Yeah.
So you're on your own."
Broken ribs suck.
Yeah. And in the ocean, you're always moving too.
Yeah.
So it's just the worst.
Only hurts when your heart beats.
So he left. Then I went out on my own from then on and made it down to San Francisco. Actually, I made it to Monterey Bay. And then I was totally broke. And so I sold that boat, caught a bus back here to Wallowa, I think. And that was the end of that first journey. But it set the hook. And so over the years, I just knew I kind of was like living on boats and working on boats and around boats, but I just didn't have the capital to get the boat I wanted until about 2008. And when that housing crash was going down. So what went first were people's boats.
Yeah.
They were trying to hold on to their houses. And so I was watching this one boat and the price was just like dropping. So I made an offer. And then we went and surveyed it, and this boat needed so much work. It was a really awesome, it's a 1977 ketch rigged, so it's got two masts, so a main mast and a mast behind it. That's about 50 feet long. It's a really cool boat. Blue water, full keel, heavy, just kind of that classic ocean ketch from the old days. But it had been neglected big time, and it needed a lot of work. And so...
Was the hull okay, or was it like electronics and...
Everything was bad except for the hull and the masts.
Okay.
And those were the two things I'm like, I think I can fix everything else.
I think
And
that's when somebody comes along and it's like, oh, it's got good bones.
Totally.
Right?
It had good bones. It had good bones. Yeah. So I bought that thing and then we put it in a yard and I've been working on it nonstop since then. So that was like 14 years ago or something.
Sure.
But wherever it is.
And the work on a sailboat never ends.
It never ends.
Yeah.
And so I've got like a big project where I'm trying to bring this thing back to its former glory.
Yep.
And then you just have your normal maintenance schedule,
Yep.
which is I'm already fixing things that I've fixed the first time.
Yeah.
So
That
never stops.
There's a guy right now who's essentially broken the internet over the past couple weeks who, punched out of corporate America, bought a sailboat, and is sailing to Hawaii with his cat. I think he just got to Hawaii a couple days ago. He's making goofy little, like real straightforward videos about the dramas that have come up. And a lot of people are seeing this in an aspirational way because so many people have had the dream at some point of like, what if I just sell everything that I have and go get on a sailboat and travel around the world? I think that might be a bit of an adolescent dream at times, but the adults who realize it and pull it off are forever changed by that. When I was still in the Marine Corps, stationed in North Carolina, I was living in this little tiny town on the coast called Swansboro. Swansboro had paver streets that were wagon width, so only one car could go down the streets at a time. There was graves there from the 1600s. It was an old little fishing town. And I was one row back from the salt water. But the house between me and the salt had been broken by hurricanes so many times that I just had a massive yard and then the ocean. And I was living above this crappy little like trinket shop where people could buy dolphin-themed glass objects. And it was so great. And I'd been hurt in Afghanistan. I'd gotten switched out of tank battalion into wounded warrior battalion. And my job essentially was just to go to doctor's appointments. So for, anywhere between 4 and 8 hours a day, I would just go to different doctors and rehabs and things like that. When I would get home, I would either get on a paddleboard or a kayak. Balance was a huge issue for me from brain injuries. So I found that the paddleboard was a great way to exercise that in a way that wasn't like standing on half of a medicine ball in some fluorescent room, you know. Uh, but a lot of times I would just get out on a kayak and go out into this backcountry and fish, catch redfish, flounder, whatever for dinner. That was a great thing for me. It was the North Carolina equivalent of being back here, where like you're going to kind of try and go out into nature and find your food and get a lot more than calories by doing so.
Do you ever fish off the paddleboard or always off the kayak?
I did fish off the paddleboard a couple times, enough times to learn my lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Painfully.
Yeah.
But anyways, one night I came back and a lot of the sailboats would moor right there. It was the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway that I was on. And a lot of them would moor right out in front of my house. So I'm cruising out in my kayak, and this boat had just dropped anchor, and they had a Swedish flag. Young couple is out there, kind of getting the boat ready for the evening, and I lived in Norway for a year when I was in high school. Still speak Norwegian. Norwegian and Swedish are similar enough that you can talk. So I paddled over there and I was like, "Hey, are you guys from Sweden, or is flag just a decoration?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're from Sweden." I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. Do you want to come over and have dinner tonight? You know, get off the sailboat, take as long of a shower as you want. Like, you know, you want to come hang out in town?" And they said, "No, we're good. But you know, why don't you come and have dinner with us here on the boat?" It's like, "Oh, that's awesome." Went out and caught some fish, came back to my house, cooked them up, went over to the boat and had fish, and got to hear their story. They were a day away from Morehead City, where they had bought their boat 5 years previously and were one day away from circumnavigating the globe.
No kidding. So you caught them right at that
at the end.
Crucial moment at the end.
Yeah. And we had...
surprised they didn't want off the boat. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if they'd had like, if they just didn't want to leave the boat, or, you know, so close to the finish line, whatever.
That could be.
Yeah.
There's a certain like paranoia that would probably arrive with that completion of that goal. So.
But similar to you, I think it was a 27 or 30 foot boat, somewhere in that range. It wasn't huge.
So it was tiny.
It was little. Awesome. And they had really strapped this thing together, and you know, they'd bought it as cheap as they could. They're still in their early 20s, and they'd done the thing. They'd bought the boat cheap. They'd flown over to Morehead City and sailed it to Sweden, done some refitting, and sailed around the world for 5 years. And I was so inspired by that. And I understand why people kind of look to folks who've made the decision that you did and just think, wow, like how amazing must that be? But I'm curious, where does that amazement start to break down? I mean, you've got knockdowns in the Columbia River, you've got sketchy bar crossings, you've got, you know, the guy your mentor is getting hurt and leaving you alone. Like where does the dream start to dissolve into reality?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with that boat, I didn't care about the boat because I love that boat. Like, we were a thing, but it was only $6,000.
Yeah.
To me. And so I didn't care. I was like, man, like, if this thing sinks, if I wreck it, I had no fear. Also, I was like in my 20s. So
sure.
So you have
You're
no
invincible.
fear at that time. Yeah. And I didn't know enough to even know how scary all that really could have been. It was later, I think, once I put all this money in this boat and all this blood, sweat, and tears on this really nice, huge boat that I now live on. It's my home, you know, and also I'm a much more responsible captain. And now my wife and kid are on board, and a lot of times there's guests on board. And that has, I would say, changed the tenor quite a bit. So I spend a lot more time just thinking things through, not doing dumb stuff, you know, really watching the weather. Like, we watch the weather like religiously. But yeah, so it's interesting. So there's a lot of different kinds of sailors. That's one thing I love about the community is everyone's different. They come from all walks of life, all corners of the globe. They share this one thing, which is a passion for the ocean and kind of like being on their own and being totally independent and like taking care of their own thing and having a lot of, quality solitude time, I think is like a big draw. It's not like van life where you're, pulling up in a very social campground. Sailing, even though there might be 20 boats in that bay, you're still separated by hundreds of feet of water minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when you're there, the weather's bad. So it's kind of like uncomfortable to just get between boats and stuff. So even though we all know each other and we meet each other, it's cruiser midnights, like 9:00. So you go home, so it's just kind of, you spend a lot of time alone out there actually.
Yeah.
So that's, everyone has that in common. Down in Mexico, where I spend most of my time, we have sailed all the way through Central America too and come back. But Mexico is sort of the training ground for like the first wave of cruisers as they come from the United States. So it's probably over 50% Americans that are often, in their first year out, something like that. And so you kind of have that. And then by the time you get to Central America and like Panama Canal, at that point, you're in the main, cruising zone. So you're going to be seeing really experienced sailors come through there a lot more. But anyways, so, we're in the Baja and we've been doing that for 10 years. So we kind of know it pretty well at this point. A lot of people are coming there first time and you see the classic pattern over and over and over. They're just like, oh yeah, we're going to go see this bay. We're going to see that bay. Oh, I heard the guidebook has a great, little thing there. I want to check that out. And then we're down to Puerto Vallarta. And then we're down from there to the next place. And they have this whole agenda of things that they think they got to see, and that usually takes about a year to like wear off till you realize like at least this happened for me anyways. But you start to realize the experience here isn't necessarily like getting to where you're going, or it's not really, it's like classic cliche. It's not the destination, it's the journey.
Yep.
And to me, the highlights might be anchoring in the same bay for 3 weeks and not seeing another person.
Right.
And you can, you don't have to put on clothes if you don't want to. I mean, and that it's like seeking those experiences out to really have become great. And you start to get to know all the animals in the area, especially if you do this year after year. And, you'll, like, we know certain dolphin families and like we can kind of recognize them, and we'll know if we anchor at this bay at this time of year, there's going to be a dolphin family there. This other area typically has a blue whale family that tends to come there all the time. So you start to really understand the landscape that you're in, and you're not just like passing through like a rocket.
Yeah.
So, for me, there's a lot of great sort of meaning associated with it there.
Sure.
And then there's the really ambitious ones that are actually on that round the world trek. And I've got tons of respect for something that big. I mean, that's massive and that's going to be great. And we might do that someday. We haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But I love the old time sailors. There's a whole crew from the 70s and 80s, and a few of them are still hanging on. And those guys started out when there was no GPS. Everything was like shortwave radio. If that. A lot of them, many of those guys built, and gals, there's a few of them too, built their own boats, by hand.
No kidding.
I mean, they just really were doing it, you know, and they're awesome. And they have so much knowledge. And the young cruisers come down with brand new boats and all this equipment and just pass right by a wealth of knowledge that's sitting right there. It's information you would never find in any book. It's not on any Reddit website. That's where it's at.
What's the one tool on your boat that you would not part with? Like, what's your MVP tool?
Well, I just said about GPS or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. I would not part with my GPS.
Okay. Yeah.
But, I mean, because it's pretty valuable to know where you are once you can't see the horizon anymore. So dead reckoning is what you do when you don't have GPS.
Yep.
And you're close to shore. And then, of course, if you go way offshore, then you would rely on a sextant and stars to know roughly where you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, GPS is pretty crucial.
Okay. What about a hand tool, like a fix something tool?
Well, so my boat kind of got all the major tools for fixing things. I mean, a multimeter to be able to trace down wiring problems. That's something you're going to be doing a lot of.
Yeah.
If you have an older boat. I finally rewired my whole boat from scratch. So
wires and salt water are such good friends.
Yeah, that's the electronics. The more of that you get, the it's tough because that is a toxic environment for
Yeah.
electronics. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time doing that. Yeah. I mean, just a drill, if you don't have a drill, you're really in trouble. Then but I've got an array of like saws. I do a lot of woodworking on my boat. Obviously a lot of it's a wooden boat. So it's a fiberglass hull.
Yeah.
But it's, there's a ton of teak everywhere on it. And the cabin top is all teak and all the interior is all total teak.
Yeah.
And so any projects involve a lot of woodworking. So, and that's the other thing with boaters. Some of them don't like maintenance, and those ones, they don't last.
Yeah.
They won't be there more than a year or two.
Yeah.
Because you spend so much time fixing your engine, fixing your rig, or fixing wiring something in that boat. So it's about half the time, I'd say, you're doing that.
Another gal who's been on the show, Steph Schultz, I think she's got 8 or 9 spearfishing world records right now. She did a similar thing. She punched out from the corporate life, bought a boat in Florida, and now she sails around the world. She just had a baby on her boat.
Awesome.
Was your kid born on the boat, or did you guys go to hospital, or how did that shake out?
Well, so Yata was pregnant on the boat, and then we had Kai up here right here in Enterprise.
Okay.
And so he's an American citizen that way.
Okay.
And then but then he's been on the boat ever since. So during the wintertime. So he's kind of growing up on the boat. And there's a whole bunch of kids now. That's one kind of neat thing that's happening after COVID is there's a new wave of families that are showing up. So
how do you manage a toddler where it's not like the ground is lava, but you get off the boat and like a 3-year-old's gonna have issues.
Yeah. So even adults, if falling off the boat, it's the number one problem.
Yeah.
If you fall off the boat, especially when you're sailing at night, I'm sure that's kind of common knowledge, but the odds of being recovered are not good. And if a kid doesn't know how to swim either, so we just view that railing as like you just said, lava out there.
Yeah.
Like we're just assume that he's going to die. Now, of course I would jump in and grab him and we'd do our best, but if he crawls out there and you're not looking and fell off, and now he's running around full speed and swinging on all the rigging and like, and we're just, I don't have much hair left, but I'm pulling out the rest of it because it is getting way more challenging.
Yeah.
So a baby is like, honestly, no big deal.
Yeah.
It's the 3-year-old to, I'm not sure where it ends because this is as far as I've got, but maybe to like 8 or 9 or something to where I think that's really the dangerous time. So,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
He's not the first kid to grow up on a boat, right?
No, I think it can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. No doubt about that. So we have a little harness for him. And whenever we're underway, he is clipped into the boat and there's some basic rules that are going to end in that require instant discipline.
Yeah.
On my part all the time. And it's been going pretty good. One is he cannot unclip that thing.
Yep.
The other is he cannot grab the throttle or the shifter.
Yep.
And that's something that was a big problem actually. Cause
sure.
If you blew up your transmission out there, that'd be a bummer. So he knows about those. Obviously you can't jump off the boat unless we're all swimming together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think what else. It's a different environment, and I don't know how it will turn out, but I think he is learning responsibility at an early age, which is kind of a cool thing.
Dude, I don't know if it's early compared to like domestic humans, but it's probably on time for how humans are supposed to be.
Yeah.
It
seems natural.
Yeah.
Because he would, exactly. I think you said it well. It seems natural.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool.
Yeah. And he's really interested in all the cruising kids they become really interested in fishing.
Yeah.
It's just because
fish are amazing.
Yeah. And just the animal life. That is so attractive to us, but the fishing, we caught a great white the other day. That was a kind of a cool story. So we weren't fishing for great white, but all of a sudden we get this thing on there and it was probably, I didn't get a chance to measure it because we could not get that thing on deck. It was so mean.
Right.
but it was probably 4 feet long.
Okay.
And I had an 80-pound leader, and it broke that when I tried to lift out of the water because I couldn't get the lure out. So it must have been 80 pounds.
So were you just trolling behind the boat?
We were just trolling. Sailing boats are not ideal fishing platforms because you got high freeboard, ton of rigging.
Right.
So, but people do try.
Yeah.
And we do that.
Oh, I mean, you gotta have the gear behind the boat if you're going places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's guaranteed that you won't catch one unless it's really windy and the sails are all up. And it's such a pain in the butt to get one. And you're fighting all the way around the boat, handing the pole off around the rigging and stuff. And so that's when we caught it. It was just like that. It was blowing 20-something knots out there. And we got it up there, and it was a cool fish.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Black eyes. Beautiful animal. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Of course, we run into shark spearfishing all the time. And when I was in Panama, we were staying on a liveaboard sailboat and then taking a big center console out every day to go hunt for tuna out in the grounds and coming back at night. And then sometimes we would sail at night to different places. And you talked about how scary it would be to fall off the boat at night while you're underway. My first night on the boat, which was my first time ever sailing at night, woke up and I was like, oh, I need to go take a leak off the side of the boat, go up there, and I'm kind of leaning on the rigging, and the boat's moving around, and I'm not used to all that motion yet. And that was the first time that I, sure enough, realized how big of a drama it would be if I fell in. And it's just you're going to die. That's kind of interesting. It's this is a pretty hazardous go to the bathroom scenario.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, it's an incredible thing when you're under sail, how quiet it is, and the feeling of that motion is so captivating.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. It's kind of like you're on a horse, and that's some people ask me what it's like. And when you have the boat totally tuned, you can feel it stretching and surging, and you can feel the tension coming on and off the rig, and the boat kind of just surging over these waves, and you get into a really cool motion. Power boats don't have that same thing. They're kind of beating the water into submission.
Yep.
But the sailboat, the wind will hold it pinned over, so you don't have, because a boat can roll, it can yaw, and it can pitch. And so with the wind holding you down, you kind of get in this nice motion where it's just sort of going in like a circle like this and up and down. And it becomes, really predictable. So you can walk around and do that. Whereas a power boat, it's a lot more jerky. And catamarans too are terrible this way. They're just real jerky, and they're always getting hit by a wave here or there. And it's, I don't know, I find them a lot harder to move around on.
Sure.
But
yeah. Well, that's super interesting. You got to travel quite a bit growing up. You got to experience living in other places. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I was fortunate that my dad worked overseas a lot when I was a kid. So he spent a lot of time in China and Mongolia. And then he's worked in a lot of other countries too, a lot of the stans and stuff. So when I was little, my first experience overseas was Inner Mongolia, which is a province of China. And it's to the north. It's the northern part, and it's kind of a desert region right below the Gobi Desert. So,
is that where the Uyghur people are from?
I think they're more to the west.
Okay.
From that. So these are Mongolians.
Okay.
So the ethnic group there is Mongolian.
Got it.
And they were assimilated. I don't know the year, a long time ago. So it's very Chinese. And during the time that we were there, which was, I was 6, so it would have been 1985 was the first. That was the time when China was really just starting to open up. And so we remember going to Beijing and everybody's wearing blue and green Mao suits and the streets are full of bicycles. Now you go there and, it's just huge buildings and tons of traffic. And I mean, it's Blade Runner, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's just changed so much. And so that area was really changing too. It's still pretty rural probably, but they were putting in the road system and cities were springing up overnight already, and it was just starting to happen. But we're way out in the boondocks out there, and we'd go there. We went there for 3 years, and I think we'd come back in the summertime is what I remember.
Do you speak Chinese?
No, I do not.
Yeah. Do you speak Spanish?
A little bit. I should know more.
You should know
it's
more.
a great shame, and I'm really sad you asked me that question.
I should know more too. Yeah. No, Duolingo sent me so many like reminder notifications that it just gave up on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can get by in Spanish, like in a restaurant, I'm fine. But the reality is what we do is we go down there and we get on our boat and we take off and we're out, in the middle of nowhere for 5 months. And then there's a lot of other sailors around, and they, are usually speaking English because that's kind of this common language around the planet that everyone converses in. So it's been a real handicap being that English is my native language.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Tell me about Chinese babies.
Chinese babies.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are you interested in the genetic engineering
Yes.
question? Yeah. So, one thing that I can mention is, I guess, my work is I'm a documentary filmmaker.
Yep.
And in 2018, I was working at the University of Arizona at that time, but I was running like a documentary unit at that university. And I got a phone call from a genetic engineer named Samara Kiani, and I never met her before. And she starts telling me all about what's going on in genetic engineering and how she wants to make a documentary because there's this massive gap between what the public understands and what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounded interesting to me. So we got into that and we started interviewing all these top scientists and things. And everywhere we went, people were saying the big thing that's going to happen is some scientists will, engineer embryos and then bring them to term to be live babies at some point. And this is ethically very fraught territory. So there's international, red lines around not doing that, that kind of thing. But they just said, it's going to happen. Someone's going to break through that glass soon, and it's probably going to happen in China. And that we just kept hearing that over and over. And eventually it just became clear we should go to China. The story here is to go to China and see if we can find that scientist. So we hired this guy, Nick Shadid, who is so fluent in Chinese that on the phone, the Chinese can't tell he's not Chinese. And that was crucial because Americans would not ever have insider knowledge. It's just such a closed culture to us. But they thought he was a Chinese person. And so we kind of just were able to work our way into all these different scenarios. And we ended up meeting and interviewing all the embryo editors in China. And there was this one, Zhuang Kuhe, everyone calls him JK, that we met. And the way he was talking, it was very clear that he was the one who was going to do it. You could just tell. He didn't admit to it at that time. It turns out he had already done it. But you could just tell that he was, from our perspective at that point, we just felt like he was the one. And we had brought a journalist with us, this guy named Antonio Regalado of MIT Technology Review. And that's his beat. He just covers the wild and crazy, the wild west of genetic engineering. That's his beat. The weirder and stranger it is, sewing a male rat onto a female rat and seeing if you could have the male give birth to babies by, just whatever. He loves that stuff. And he wanted to find this person too. He was in that interview and he knew immediately. He's like, that's the guy. So he goes back to MIT, and he's a great investigative journalist, and he dug deep and found these documents that had been posted for ethical review to this Chinese hospital that had JK's name on it. And he knew right then that the babies were either born, they were about to be born, or they had already been terminated, which is, I think, a real concern, is that they'd take them all the way up to the point of birth and then terminate them just to avoid a scandal.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew that was the scenario. And at that time, when he figured that out, it was about a week before this huge summit that was going to happen called the second summit for human genome engineering. And JK was scheduled to speak at that summit on other materials. But Antonio figured out that JK was probably going to announce what he had done at this summit. And so Antonio wrote an article about the first CRISPR babies, and CRISPR is the technology that they were using at that time to edit embryos. And he dropped this bombshell while all the scientists and all the journalists from around the world were on an airplane, all flying to this summit. And so as they're getting off their airplanes in Hong Kong, where the summit was, this story was breaking. And he did that so intentionally because there'd be no way to control it, because there was this 8 or 9 hour gap while all the spin doctors were in the air that
Wow.
the story took off. And so by the time we got there was already 200 journalists there, and the tension in the air was super thick. And JK comes out and everybody's taking photos. We couldn't even believe that he showed, because the communist government told him to not go, but he went anyway. And so he knew that this was his last chance to really talk to the public before something bad happened. And so he goes up on stage and they do the Q&A and everything. And then after that, these security guys grab him, boom, and he's gone. He disappears. And so no one knows what happened to him for about 2 weeks. And then the New York Times tracks him down, and he's under house arrest in this apartment building somewhere. And they're trying to communicate with him. And eventually they try to get into where he's at. And then there's 10 or 20 Secret Service type people.
Good luck.
Yeah, that are all blocking him off and everything. And then he eventually went to prison for 3 years and for doing that. But the documentary I made really was filming with him before this happened, filmed that whole episode, which was super exciting, and made it an international story for a moment, for a week. It's crazy how short our attention span is right now, because that is a big story. The first, engineered human beings. Anyway, so, and then we just really researched how all that happened, how it went down. And he had support from the communist government to do this.
Exactly. You would have to.
He did. And they were pushing him to do it, and they had a deal with him, which was some controversy. We understand that we're breaking ethical boundaries here, but we're doing it because genomic engineering was one of their science and research areas that they want to be dominant in going forward. And so they wanted to leapfrog. So China is able to bend these ethical boundaries in ways that the West doesn't. And so that's to their advantage. And so they thought they could leapfrog ahead doing this. And so they pushed him to do it. They encouraged him to do it. They funded it. But the deal was some controversy. Too much, we're going to, we won't be able to support you publicly. And so that's how he ended up with the 3-year prison sentence. They had to publicly chastise him and do all of that. The other thing, which I think is even more important, is all the top scientists in the U.S. Jennifer Doudna, the Nobel Prize winner, was involved with him. He met James Watson, the discoverer of DNA, who told him to do it. And essentially, it's kind of a cool story. So he met him, and Watson's deaf, and JK has poor English, so they couldn't communicate. So JK writes down on a piece of paper, when you discovered the structure of DNA, did you think that someday we would edit humans? And Watson said, yes. And then JK writes, should we edit humans? And then Watson writes, make people better, which is an ambiguous answer that, so JK took that piece of paper, framed it, put it on his office wall for all of his employees to see. And there were others too that encouraged him. Behind the scenes, the top U.S. scientists wanted somebody to break the glass too.
Sure.
So they kind of put him up to it.
I mean, that is such a crazy question of what does it mean to make people better? Does that mean make them more compassionate? Does that mean make them into Olympians? Does it mean make them intelligent, better at pattern recognition? All the above? None of the above?
It's a whole new era.
It's crazy.
Of engineering.
So what was he editing for? Was it disease resistance?
Yeah. In this case, they edited a gene called CCR5. And CCR5, they sort of backfilled the reason to do it, but the real reason they did it is because CCR5 is well studied. And so they were fairly confident they could do the edits safely, because the worst case scenario would be a baby that comes out that's horribly mutated in some way. That would that would be devastating for the whole enterprise. So they want to do something safe. And what CCR5 does if you disable it is it makes that person immune to HIV.
Mm-hmm.
So they're highly resistant to HIV. And so these two twin girls, Lulu and Nana, were born immune to HIV. So that was the enhancement. So he crossed a bunch of lines right away. One was doing it, and the other is enhancement, which is a whole nother kind of ethical concept of what you were getting at.
What year?
That was in 2018.
Okay. It's interesting that HIV would be the first thing that they would go after. China's making huge moves in Africa, throughout the continent. And it feels to me like they're trying to own it through and through. Like every major port in Africa has a massive Chinese influence, to the extent that when I was last in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, all of the scaffolding was made out of bamboo that was being imported from China to be able to create Chinese buildings in Dar es Salaam. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, China's trying to secure resources for growth all the time. And,
Right.
and Africa is this a continent full of opportunity.
Yeah.
And the West has been slow to dominate that area. And so it makes sense that they would.
Are there other countries that are dabbling in this right now?
Yeah, it's not just China. The U.S. is also a leader.
Yeah.
But yeah, Thailand, the Saudi Arabia, they're putting a lot of money into it. So
How would you make people better? Or would you?
Well, it's to me, the question becomes most pointed, I think, when it comes to like longevity. So it seems clear from the research that I did that it's plausible that we could make humans live average about 120 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's well within the bounds. If you did extreme editing, it could be a lot further than that. But yeah, to live a healthy lifespan to 120 and then decline, that's a lot more years than we get now. And so the question I can always ask people is like, well, if you could take a shot and, return your immune system back to when you were 25, which is 3 edits, 3 genes, it's well within our technology now. They're rolling it out with dogs right now. Would you take that shot? So, and I had just, during the filming of this documentary, I asked everybody that question, and the answers were interesting. So young people, it's always like, oh yeah, I do not want to die. I would take that. And then the older people get, the less likely they are to say yes. There's sort of this wisdom that we seem to accumulate over the years, and an acceptance of the natural lifespan and of death itself and dying and that whole process. And I think by the time I was asking people who are in their 80s and 90s, one older woman on an airplane told me, she's like, well, all my friends are gone now. I don't know if I would want to live longer because my entire world is sort of gone, So it would take a massive sort of mental shift to have our lifespan expand again that far, I think.
I mean, death is what gives life meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there's other things too, right? Spearfishing gives life meaning as well. But gosh, that's wild.
There's a certain immaturity in my mind associated with not facing death and accepting that is a reality.
For sure. I also see it in older folks who are very wealthy, especially if their wealth has suddenly like doubled in their, since they were 60 or something like that, doubled again. And it's like, wow, now I have the financial means to do all of this stuff that I've worked for all my life, but now this life is fading away and I'm no longer physically able to go after it. And that group of folks, I think, oftentimes has a different relationship with the concept of death. But
you can definitely see that in Silicon Valley with the the transhumanist movement and
sure.
Yeah, they do not want to die.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think anything north of 75 doesn't look that great to me right now.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of going hard at everything while I can.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it brings up so many interesting ethical questions. Something I've brought up to a few physicians and people, and usually I get laughed at, so it's probably a dumb idea. But I think the biggest medical problem to solve in humans is sleep. If we didn't have to sleep, we could add on 30% right now. So you're 60 years old, would be 80 years old, just like that.
Sure.
Like we're wasting a third of our life just like shutting it down every day. It's ridiculous.
Sort of two ideas there. One is, what if we made sleep better so that we repaired ourselves better? That would extend our life too.
Yeah.
Because sleep is in my opinion, such a huge part of health. I think we're learning that nowadays. But the other thing is it really wasted time? I mean, that is 1/3 of your time. You're in a different form of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a very valuable 1/3.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that we can't remember those experiences that we're having in that state of consciousness, but it's an intriguing area.
Yeah. Sleep is wild. It's very obnoxious to me. I'm not good at it. So that's a problem. But I've still got to do it. I would rather just not have to sleep. I would love to not have to drink water. Some of these little like maintenance issues, you're talking about maintaining your boat. I'm talking about maintaining my body and my life. I would love to not have to do some of these things.
Yeah.
That would be great.
But just not enough hours in the day kind of thing.
Well, I mean, you could be so productive if you could just experience night. And I hunt at night a lot, and it's such a different world. It's as different, I think, from living in the day as it is between like living in the air and then diving under the water. Like it's a way to experience a different world, almost like it's a different plane of consciousness. So yeah, there's just so much of life that we're missing out on, because when it gets dark, we're like, okay, I guess I'll just like lose a third of my time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
one of my favorite genetic engineers is this guy named George Church. I spent a lot of time with him, and he was instrumental in making the film.
Yeah.
And he's 6'5", a big, huge white beard. He looks like God.
Yeah.
And he is, he's one of the pioneers of the field. So he really is dabbling in that realm of power, and he is a different individual. And one of the things that he is that he's an extreme narcoleptic person. So he's awake all the time. What he said is that he never really sleeps and he's never really awake.
Right.
He's sort of in this in-between zone, but he does find it extremely productive. So he has all these companies, I'm not sure how many, let's say 30 or more. And some of them are worth like over $1 billion, and he's busy. So he has teams around the world. Yeah. And he's like, they're in all these different time zones and I'm always awake, and it's just extremely productive because I can meet with them at any hour. Yeah. And keep things going. Yeah. So
I know that there's a percentage of the population that can function normally on less than 5 hours of sleep, but it's like 1 or 2%. It's very, very little. But I don't know. It's something I think about. What is Tribeca?
Yeah. So Tribeca is a film festival.
Okay.
And it's in New York, and it's I think it got its name from the neighborhood Tribeca. Probably where it started. It's
sounds bougie.
It's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to go shopping. So this year, the latest film I'm doing was accepted at Tribeca, and so it's a big honor.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and so hopefully it'll lead to great things for the film that we're doing, and we'll be going there to premiere the film June 8th.
Coming right
up, yeah.
Okay, so tell me about this film.
Well, I actually brought you a gift.
Did you?
Yeah, so I have 3 hats here. I've got black, white, and light blue. So
I'm team black. Thank you so much.
Going black. So, yeah. So here, I'll set it right
All
here
right,
for you.
Thank you.
And so this hat says The Last Dive, and it's got a picture of a manta ray on it.
Uh-huh.
And manta rays are one of my favorite animals now. So these mantas are the oceanic mantas. The one that the film was about is named Willie, and Willie is 22 feet across, so it's a huge animal.
What would something like that weigh?
Several tons.
Several tons.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly, but
huge.
Yeah, they're huge. They're huge animals, and so the film is about Terry and Willie. And Willie Terry is a veteran. He's a Vietnam vet. He's got this really interesting life. He was a Hell's Angel for a while. He had a very dark period in his life, and then eventually left all that, bought a sailboat, sailed to Mexico, and just started diving and just dove every day, sometimes 4 times a day.
Scuba diving?
Scuba diving.
Okay.
Yep, and spearfishing.
Yeah.
His biggest fish is a 384-pound grouper.
Okay.
So he was really into big fish. And eventually he went out to this remote island called Isla San Benedicto, and it's part of the Revilla Gigedo island chain, and that's about 250 miles off Cabo. And he went out there, and he was one of the first. Back then, nobody went there. It's right in the middle of Hurricane Alley. It's a really difficult, dangerous place to be. And he anchored there, and immediately this enormous manta ray came up to his boat. And he saw this manta ray and just didn't think, just put on scuba gear, jumped in the water, and started swimming with it. And the manta ray was all around him, and then came up underneath him to where he couldn't even get away from it. And next thing he knows, he's on the back of this manta ray, and he starts kind of petting it down and rubbing it and just sort of connecting with it. And then eventually cups a hand over its upper lip, and the manta just starts pushing its wings down and gliding away. And then next thing you know, he was riding this manta for about 15 minutes. And every day after that, this manta would come up, slap its huge wing on his hull. Terry would put on scuba gear, jump in the water, and go play with this manta. And he did this for 19 years. He just lived out there as much as he could and swam with his friend Willie, and they had all kinds of adventures. And then he started to film it, and so the film, we have this massive archive of footage starting in 1988 or so, all the way up until the last time that he saw Willie, which is around 2016. And Terry hasn't seen Willie since then, and Terry's getting older now. And so we put an expedition together to go out to this island and see if we could reunite them one last time.
Wow.
So, yeah.
How long do manta rays live?
That's also kind of an unknown thing. That was a big concern for us. Like, is Willie even alive?
Yeah.
So I started plugging in with the scientists on that, and they don't know because they really only started. So Terry really inspired the first scientific studies of manta rays. They were not being studied before this. And he ran into a scientist named Dr. Rubin and started showing him this footage of his interactions with this manta. And then Dr. Rubin went and got a huge grant and started the whole research program out at this island and started studying them. So the oldest mantas that we know for sure are, when that research started, which was like in the 90s. But I was talking to the scientists the other day, and they have had mantas that have disappeared for, say, 32 years is the longest, and then all of a sudden shown back up at that island. So it appears that they're really long-lived. Mm-hmm. And there's a good chance so when we got to the island, so Terry knew all the mantas out there. He had them all named. There's Finger, who had this marking on his belly that looks like you're getting flipped off, and
yeah.
And the way Terry is so funny. He's like, he narrates his own videos, kind of like Jacques Cousteau or something. Uh-huh. He's like, nature is sending us a message. And then there's Rosie that had a flower on her bottom.
Because they're all recognizable by a unique pattern on their bellies, right?
That's right. It's like a fingerprint. Yeah. And so the scientists started an ID program. And so all the tourists that go there, they take all those photos, and all the scientists go there. And so they track them all and that kind of thing.
I've taken pictures of a couple of them while I'm freediving, try and get under them and take pictures of their bellies, because if you find a new one, you can name it.
Yeah, you can name it. Yeah, for sure.
I have not found a new one.
Yeah, that's great though.
Yeah.
Have you been out to that island?
I've not, no.
Okay, cool.
No.
Was this in Hawaii that you're diving with them, or?
I've seen them in Hawaii. Where else did I see one? I, s- I think I saw one in Panama this year. But yeah, I've seen them around in different places.
Yeah.
Um, I can't remember if I saw one in Baja last winter in Loreto or not. I had some fantastic spearfishing out there. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And
Where'd you go in Loreto?
so, it's got the big marine park there that you can fish in, but you can't spearfish in it, right? Such a kick in the knockers. So we would go north out of the park, and then it was essentially shore dives that we were accessing with pongas.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really beautiful. I shot a big rooster fish, which was awesome. Such a gorgeous fish. Not a good eating fish. Don't think I'll shoot one again.
But they're big fighters, right?
Oh my God, are they powerful?
Yeah.
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 I actually, it was a super cool spearfishing experience because I wanted to find a rooster fish. We'd seen some earlier. I didn't think that they should even be there that time of year, so it was a surprise for me. And on one of these dive spots, I got in like the rooster fish tornado. So I had a whole school of them spinning around me, and there's little fish that I could see. So I took a drop, and as I went down, and there's this big cyclone, roosters going around me, the fish were getting bigger the deeper I went. And my dive watch buzzes at me when I hit 10 meters so that I know where I'm neutral. And as soon as my watch buzzed, I kind of opened my eyes a little bit more and looked around. And I was like, all these fish are plenty big. So took a shot on one, hit it. I had a breakaway. So I reached over and I grabbed my my line and started to kick back up to the surface. And I'm just happily kicking along. And I'm like, I should be there by now. And I looked up and I was no closer than when I had started. And I was like, oh, this fish is holding me down. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So let go of the line, went back up. And then every time I tried to pull that fish up from the top, it would just pull me underwater. I didn't have enough buoyancy to actually hoist that fish up. So I just swam my float over to the captain on the ponga and handed it to him. I was like, can you please pull this fish up?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
But
that's awesome.
yeah, it's interesting to hear that the Sea of Cortez has fewer fish and less life than it did at one time, which is understandable. But I was amazed at the sea life that was there. My biggest trip for this year is going back to Baja to go spearfishing for a week, but I'll be on the Pacific side looking for striped marlin in November.
Cool.
And I'm so excited about that. I'm actually going to go up to the lake tomorrow and start practicing diving again. It's supposed to be 80 degrees. I know the thermocline's going to be like, 15 feet deep, and then I'll be in 34-degree water, and it's going to suck a lot, but
Jeez.
I've just got to do it.
Yeah, cold water is like a little easier though, right? In some ways, just because your body slows down.
It is. Yeah, that cold water on your face definitely helps with bradycardia and activating that mammalian dive reflex for sure. The thermocline, though, is real. So, I might have 58, 60-degree water on the surface tomorrow. But as you drop down and you hit that thermocline, it's like a wall. And it feels like you just swam into concrete. So, you're in this like really relaxed, zenned out state, trying to, get your mind and your body right, and then do your duck dive and start to kick down, and everything's going well. And you've got this plan, counting your kick cycles and whatever your process is, and then just slam and you get hit by all this cold water and the color changes. And a lot of times as you push through it, it gets very dark because there'll be like a chlorophyll layer above you. I was doing a dive up in kind of the Puget Sound area, Hood Canal.
That's where I got certified for scuba diving.
Nice.
In the middle of winter, it was snowing when we got in.
Yeah.
It's miserable.
Yeah.
There. And I couldn't even see my hand.
Yeah. The visibility wasn't too bad. You could probably see 5 or 6 feet, down to say 40 feet, somewhere in that zone. And I was trying to do a 20-meter drop, and I went down. And when I got down there, I turned around to start to head back up, and it was pitch black. It was noon. I was like, it was daylight like 45 seconds ago. What is going on? And it scared me. And
and all those responses totally screw up your Zen,
dude. Yeah,
and then you're burning oxygen like crazy.
Yeah. Oh, I shot to the surface. Like it was not.
Yeah.
It was not a good dive. But yeah, anything that surprises me in the water kind of knocks me out of it. So that's just experience. The more I do it, the fewer things can surprise me. But yeah, the thermocline is real. That's the bottom line. So I know, like, going into it tomorrow that thing's going to slap me in the face, and I just have to, relax and keep doing my thing.
What kind of fish do you find in the lake up there?
So currently we can spearfish for suckers up here in the lake, which is awesome. Cool. So if you go to the area of the lake that has them, you can spearfish for those as much as you want. But there's kokanee and lake trout and rainbow trout. You see lots and lots of fish up there. It's really beautiful. And then Idaho is opening spearfishing for a number of species on July 1st. So they're going to open for bass, walleye, pike, lake trout. And I'm not sure if there's anything else. And it's going to be in different regions. They're going to open it for different fish. And it looks like Oregon is going to open for bass and walleye on January 1st. So I've been pushing really hard on this freshwater spearfishing thing for a few years, and these states are starting to do it, and there's more and more interest. So excited about it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
I'm curious from your perspective. Your spearfishing is probably a little bit less recreational and a little bit more grocery shopping.
Yeah, that's definitely how I approach it. So like a lot of my friends that come that are really good spear fishermen, they'll get in the water and be shooting fish left and right and stuff like that. And I don't shoot that often, honestly. Nowadays I'll just shoot like a good snapper or a grouper, something that I want to eat. Yeah, cabrilla is a good option. Yellowtail, of course, if you get into some yellowtail, that's the best. But yeah, so just get some of those, and a lot of times just try to. I was in a dry spell this year, I'll be honest. And someone told me they're just like, just leave your gun on the boat for 5 dives.
Yeah.
And that was a great trick, because whatever I was doing, it's something in your mind.
Oh yeah.
But whatever that was, just taking the hunting out of it for a second and just kind of reconnecting with the basics of loving being underwater and enjoying the beauty and getting your mind right. And all of a sudden the fish come back in, because I don't know how spiritual you are about the fish, but I'm getting there. And they can sense something about you. And so all of a sudden those big fish start showing up again.
I think it's physics. I think it's physics for sure. But it is absolutely true. And I didn't believe it for years. I had friends tell me, like, you can't think dangerous thoughts while you're down there. Like, the fish know. I was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have a gun, I was covered up in fish. And then if I had a gun, I'd see a lot fewer fish, or they're wigged out. And yeah, it was exactly like that. I had that same exact experience. So I have to really lie to myself in order to lie to those fish.
Yep. And
my friends who are really good at it, like, they take a drop, and I can watch fish from, like, if it's clear water, like over in Hawaii or whatever, and I could watch Kylie take a drop. I can watch fish from 150 feet away, like, start swimming towards her to check her out. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as I take a drop, they do the exact opposite. Like, they're gone.
Yeah.
But I want to kill them.
Yeah. There's a difference.
Yeah. And she does too. And that's exactly what she's doing. But she just knows how to control that a little bit more. So, they're so sensitive to electromagnetism, to, their lateral lines can sense movement in the water. I'm sure that they can sense your heartbeat. I think we probably emit different pheromones when we're in a hunting mode. Mm-hmm. And we see it with land predators too, right? Like, sometimes you can watch a coyote or a bear or something walk right through a herd of cows, and they don't even pick their heads up. Same thing with elk. Mm-hmm. And then other times, as soon as that predator hits the edge of the field, every single deer, elk, cow is picking their head up and, like, having a very, very strong reaction to that.
Yeah. Another big one is eye contact.
Eye contact is huge.
So like when I get down, I'll try to just, look at the surface on my way down. And then when I get down, look at the rocks that I'm holding on to and just try to keep my head down.
Yeah.
And kind of get everything ready and get loosened and be ready. And then you kind of sense that there's something coming in somewhere, but don't look at it because the minute you look at it, it's gone. And I just sort of wait until I'm pretty sure that, okay, that feels like a big fish right there. You know, it's looking right or feeling right.
Yeah.
And then the minute you look up, it'll turn broadside to you because it doesn't like to be seen. And that's the shot. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's one of the reasons that I encourage people who are land-based hunters to try spearfishing is you're going to learn some lessons from these fish that you can apply to everything else you do. But yeah, you've got to be right in your mind for sure.
And then another thing that I think is crucial, which I just learned through trial and error, but when the current is running, all the fish are going to be out because they're feeding. So you're going to see, you dive the same spot 2 hours later, you're like, oh, that's no fish here.
Yeah.
But if you wait until that current's bombing, all the groupers and stuff will be lined up on the bottom, and and then they're focused on eating.
Right.
And so you can get the drop on them a lot because they think that you're there. I just kind of get into them and pretend like I'm picking out little things out of the water column too. And then bam, get that one.
Yeah.
Like, oops, sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? So like they just kind of, because they're focused, they have something to do. But if they're just swimming around and it's a lazy moment and stuff, they might come over because they're curious or something, but they're watching you. They're really paying attention to you. So it's like a kind of a different, I feel like the fish are in a different mindset when they're eating.
In your area, do you have to worry about ciguatera at all?
I don't think the Sea Cortez has very little of that, if any. So it's not something that I worry about. Although with barracuda, have heard a couple stories, but like when you Google it, it looks like it's fine. So
I think a lot of what people blame on water when they get like traveler's diarrhea or whatever is probably oftentimes ciguatera from fish at restaurants that, you know, they bought from a local diver or fisherman that was like, yeah, I'm not feeding this to my family here. Give me a couple pesos and feed it to the tourists.
Yeah, and I was sad to hear this year, like a lot of the fish restaurants are actually getting their fish not from Mexico now. They're getting it from other places.
Really?
And yeah, and their culture wouldn't be so aware of ciguatera. So I could see you getting poisoned in a restaurant with a snapper or something that came from, I don't know, Ecuador or something.
Right. Yeah, the Caribbean.
Yeah, or the Caribbean. Yeah, it's real bad there. So
this is an aside, did you sail through the Panama Canal?
No, we did not. Yeah.
I heard they charge just an arm and a leg.
It could be true. I'm not sure what the prices are right now, but I think it's like all things in this world, it's going up.
Yeah. Like, I think it was like $14,000 for that sailboat that I was on to go through.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's a lot of money if that's what it is. Yeah. Especially some of these sailors, you know, there's sort of a couple different classes of sailors. Some of them are living out there and they don't have any money at all.
Yeah.
So that would be a huge deal.
Yeah. Panama City feels weird to me right now. There are all these huge high rises, brand new construction that don't have a light on in them. Like there's some weird stuff going on there, and I don't quite know what to make of it. I think that they're raking in a huge amount of money from the canal, and they're just trying to put it into infrastructure that isn't being used.
Yeah.
But the folks that I talked to down there, and this is without me even bringing it up, they were still very mad about the U.S. leaving in the 70s. They were making $8 an hour then. They're making like $1.30 an hour now. They're really upset about the gringos leaving.
Yeah. That's interesting to hear that. Yeah. So they just kind of collapsed the whole system that it
just turned into a like nepotistic government corrupt situation, and then, you know, fewer people were making more money. Yeah.
Yep. I don't know firsthand, but that's not surprising to hear that.
Yeah.
So
what's your next film project?
Well, there's a couple. I have 2 or 3 things that are in development right now. One of them is related to the Marine Corps, actually. So yeah, and none of these are for sure, so I can't really talk about them too much. Another one is an investigation into a cult, but again, I can't it's ongoing right now, so I can't.
That feels like the same one twice.
The Marine Corps is the investigation.
No, the Marine Corps is the cult.
Is the cult. That's what I mean. Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. So we can't talk about that one because too many details will come out. And
Yeah.
So, yeah. Are you familiar with WTI?
No.
It's a Marine Corps school that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in that. And that's
Okay.
something my brother's involved in. So
Gotcha.
trying to develop something there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then a couple other fun ideas. One is this woman who basically just started saving whales. That was like her thing.
Mm-hmm.
So these whales were caught in nets, which is a huge problem. And she just would go out there and like try to cut the nets off and didn't know what she was doing, but kind of like learned how to do it over the years.
Yeah.
And then started training other people. And then now it's grown into this, the Mexican government, CONAP funds it. So she has like 15 teams, around Mexico now. And then she just was selected by the International Whaling Commission to lead their disentanglement program for the entire world. So her story is really interesting. And we're trying to figure out how to film that. It's difficult because you can't have a diver in the water in that scenario.
Why not?
Well, I've actually tried to rescue a whale one time myself, and it's kind of a cool story. So we're anchored, and this humpback comes in and to all the boats, and it's going to all the boats, and it's just showing us this massive monofilament fishing net with all these floats that are caught around its head,
Okay.
and a huge clump around its tail, and it couldn't really dive because the floats were too much. So it's just going around showing us all this, and it just seemed clear that it was kind of asking for help, And so several cruisers got in their dinghies, and we went over there, and it then became a little bit aggressive and flipped one guy's dinghy totally over and dumped him and his motor. So I called up a friend who knows a little bit about it, and he told me how to make this tool, which is like a long pole, and you put like a knife on the bottom and then a knife facing the other way, so it makes like a V, and then that way you're not cutting the whale. You slide that up underneath and then cut back towards you, and the filament goes into that, and you can cut.
Yeah, like a big letter opener.
Yep, exactly. So I made this thing, hopped in my dinghy, went out there, and got close to it, and it did seem agitated, at this point, and it's then used its pectoral and just slapped the front of our dinghy really hard, and luckily no one was sitting there. Could have been injury right there. So then we backed away, kind of thinking that maybe it's really worried about the dinghy motors, because whales get hit by props a lot too.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. So the next attempt, I went on a paddle board up to it, and that time it let me get right into it. And so I'm in it, and then I decided to get into the water to see if I can like connect with it in some way, because someone had told me like, don't approach it by its tail. Approach it by its head so they can see you and see what you're about, and then you can start. So I get in the water. Next thing I know, this humpback goes all the way around me, and its huge head and parts of his body are like right next to me, and then there's net everywhere around me. And I just started panicking, to be honest. I was like, I am feeling a tremendous amount of fear right now, and I don't feel like I'm in this, happy space. I'm not putting out good vibes right now. So I got back into the paddleboard and got out of there because I didn't want to get caught in the net. Essentially, getting caught in that net would have been bad.
Yeah.
So I called it. So I did a little Googling, called this group called Rabin, which is how I met this lady.
Okay.
And they sent a boat out. The boat didn't arrive for 4 hours. The whale at that point was long gone, and so they couldn't find the whale. So they're searching. The next day, we go out in our boat, and another boat went out, and we just spent the next 3 days just searching, just driving around, sailing around, trying to find it, calling on the radio, alerting people, like, look for this whale.
Yeah, you're committed at this point. You're invested.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, we got to save the whale, And so I posted a video on Facebook, and I want this story to be true. I have heard that maybe this isn't 100% true, but I'm going to tell it anyway because I want this to be the true version for myself anyway. But somebody a rich person saw the video, contacted Rabin, and said, you can use my helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
So then they took the helicopter and found the whale and cut it free, and we ended up saving the whale.
Nice. Good job.
So I was feeling really excited about that. Then when I met this lady later and we started talking about the documentary, I asked her about the whale and if she remembered that whale. And she said that they did not use a helicopter. So I don't know if that's a true story. So it kind of ruins my story.
Certainly true that it is a story.
It's true that it's a story.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, good job. Gold star.
Yeah. So the danger, though, is putting people in the water with those animals and the nets, and that affects, so they have a whole process by which they cut the netting off, and they do it from the boat. When people are in the water, it causes the animal to do different behaviors that are not going to help. So, so to film it, we need to have a drone that can go out and then lower a camera into the water.
Yeah.
To do this. So,
or an underwater drone.
Yeah. Those have, so I have one of those too, and they have tethers, and I don't know if you've tried to drive one of those.
No, I have not.
Yeah. I'm a drone pilot.
Okay.
Aerial drone pilot.
Yeah.
The underwater situation, I get lost down there so fast.
Yeah.
And because you're underwater, you don't have a GPS positioning of which way you have a compass, and that's it. So it's in the water, the visibility is not enough to where you can really tell where you are.
Yeah.
So if you were close to the whale, I think that'd work. But if you're like trying to drive from a boat a long distance to where the whale situation is, I'm not confident that you would be able to do much with it, but somebody might be able to, not me.
Yeah.
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 Also, you have another vehicle and another cable in the water, and I think might get caught in the net pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If you're close enough to get that shot. So
no, I would definitely think that you would want it to not be tethered, but there's got to be a way. There's these little remote control boats that they use for dumping shark baits.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you could put a camera on the keel of one of those and
just get over there. Yeah.
You just drive a GoPro over there.
Yeah.
It'd at least be submerged,
Well, I want to get like a high quality, pretty large camera. So
of course you do.
This stuff would be,
yeah.
Next level in size. And honestly, underwater, it's still one of those things. I think robotics is going to be a while, because those underwater cameramen are so good at balancing, and they're aware of what's going on around them, and they can set up for the shot. And there's so much situational awareness that they have that to get that awesome shot, well, it's going to be a challenge.
That'll be a good project. Where can people watch your films?
So Make People Better, the one on the genetic engineering, it's available on Amazon, so you can watch it there. Go to the website, just Google Make People Better.
Mm-hmm.
The Last Dive, I would turn people on to thelastdivefilm.com, and you can learn all about the film there. I don't know when it's coming out on like a streaming service, but for the county, we're going to show it at the OK Theater July 31st.
Okay.
So for all my friends and family here, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at that. So.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I hope that I'm here. I would love to be able to go down and watch that. Love the OK Theater.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. I've taken up far too much of it, but you're an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Classic Sheehy stuff.
Well, this podcast is great. I've been doing a deep dive on a lot of your stuff, and these stories are good. So it's an honor to be here for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Well, yeah, good luck in New York. Send me a picture of your fancy threads that you end up putting on so that you can hang out with fancy people at your fancy film festival.
Yep, you got it. You got it.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you to everyone who has taken the time out of their busy lives to write a review for the show and share it with their friends. I'm extremely proud of how intelligent, engaged, and adventurous this audience is. Original music for the Six Ranch podcast is written and performed by Justin Hay. Art for the Six Ranch podcast was created by John Chatelain and digitized by Celia Harlander. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.